Visible na po ba 'to?
Oo, li lumabas na dito at saka yung sound.
Okay po. So good day everyone. I will be discussing the prevalence, dynamics, and consequences of sexual assault in the Philippines. This topic is not only a matter of law and public health, but also a human rights concern. Our goal today is to understand how common sexual assault is, how it happens, and what lasting effects it brings to individuals in our society. So, sexual assault is not limited to rape alone. It includes molestation, harassment, exploitation, and even online abuse. It is a major concern in the Philippines because it affects people across all ages, genders, and backgrounds. For this presentation, we will look into three things first. First, its prevalence or how common it is. Second, its dynamics or how and why it occurs. And finally, consequences and the consequences it leaves behind. So how do we define sexual abuse? Sexual assault. In the Philippines, sexual assault is defined by the laws such as the Anti-Rape Law of 1997 or the RA 8353, the Anti-Violence Against Women and Their Children Act, the RA 926 or known as the VAUSI, and other provisions under the revised penal code. And importantly, our laws recognize that rape can be committed against both women and men. With the rise of technology, online sexual abuse and exploitation of children, or OSEC, also become a serious crime with specific legislation addressing it. Moving on, talking about prevalence, the intimate partner and general violence. According to the 2017 National Demographic and Health Survey, about 24% of women with a partner reported experiencing some form of violence. Specifically, around 10% suffered physical violence, 3% experienced sexual violence, and 19% emotional violence. More recent data from the Philippine Commission on Women also indicates that nearly one in every five women aged 50 to 49 have experienced violence from their partner. Knowing this, there are also prevalence of sexual assault in children and online exploitation. One of the alarming concerns in the Philippines is child sexual abuse, especially online exploitation. In 2019, there were about 426,000 reports of online child sexual abuse. By 2023, that number skyrocketed to 2.7 million reported incidents. The Child Protection Network also reported that from 2022 to 2023, more than 73% of child abuse cases in the country were sexual in nature. Clearly, children are among the most vulnerable groups. Among this, there's also prevalence in the reported rape cases and other crimes. So, the Philippine National Police records thousands of rape cases every year. For instance, around 9,400 rape cases were reported in a recent year, between July 2021 and January 2022. Cases range from over 5,000 to nearly 4,000. But we must remember these numbers reflect only the reported cases. Because of such stigma and fear, many victims do not come forward, which means that true prevalence is much higher. This means that there are still numerous unreported cases out there. So moving on, the dynamics. Contrary to the myth of the stranger danger, most sexual assaults are committed by people the victim knows. In the Philippines, perpetrators are often intimate partners, relatives, or trusted adults. This means ito po yung mga jowa or asawa or kahit yung mga kamag-anak po natin. In cases involving children, it is not unusual for abusers to be parents, relatives, or even godparents. This closeness po kasi creates a silence and fear in victims, making it harder for them to speak out. Kumbaga dito po sa lalo na po sa children cases po, hindi po sila nagre-report kasi nanay mo naman 'yan, tatay mo naman 'yan, bakit mo ire-report? In that in that case, it creates a stigma and silence between them po. Moving on, we have underreporting and barriers to reporting. One of the biggest challenges that I have mentioned is underreporting. Victims often keep silent due to shame, fear of retaliation, or the belief that authorities won't help them. In rural areas, limited access to support services and trained law enforcers make the problem even worse. As a result, many cases go unpunished and victims remain unprotected. This is sadly the case in Philippines where often Uh, the victims do not report because, of course, of the stigma and the fear that they will not be believed in. Of course, there are consequences in such actions. Sexual assault has immediate effects on the victim's health. Many suffer injuries such as bruises, lacerations, and internal trauma. Victims are also at higher risk of contracting sexually transmitted infections and experiencing unwanted pregnancies. These consequences require urgent medical attention, which not all survivors are able to access. Due to Philippines not having enough funding, sometimes the immediate physical consequences that they experience are not addressed at immediately, which can cause further injuries and other things that they may have contracted to be worsened over time. Also, we have the psychological and emotional consequences. The emotional impact is just as severe. Victims often struggle with depression, anxiety, and post-traumatic stress disorder. Some even develop suicidal thoughts. Among women in the NDHS survey, emotional abuse was the most common form of violence reported. For children, sexual abuse can lead to lasting trauma, mistrust, and low self-esteem. Other than the physical abuse, the victims experience psychological and emotional consequences, and they are not easily as addressed in the public or given proper treatment for it. Of course, there's also social and economic consequences. Beyond individual suffering, sexual assault affects communities and the economy. Victims may drop out of school or lose their jobs. Families may face medical bills, legal expenses, and emotional strain. Dito na po na parang these are the effects of the psychological and the physical um consequences they receive. Eventually it will affect their social and economic consequences, because some of them might fear going out, and that fear may not lead them to be fully integrated into community or have a proper job or even not be able to go to school. Of course, the existence of social stigma and victim blaming also isolates survivors, making their recovery even more difficult. In the long run, this affects not only the victims but also the development of our society. Of course, we have to have a response. The legal and institutional response is that the Philippines has passed strong laws to combat sexual violence. The RA 8353 against rape, RA 9262 against violence towards women and children, and laws against online child exploitation. Institutions like the PNP Women and Children Protection Center and the Barangay Vow Desks provide assistance. The Rape Crisis Center Act requires hospitals to provide services for survivors. Still, of course, despite having all this, enforcement and accessibility remain uneven. Though we have all these things that the Philippines has passed and the things that the government have made, like the PNP Women Health Desk, it is still not yet accessible. And sometimes there is still a stigma between going to there and reporting. Of course, there are still different strategies, challenges, and the gaps that we encounter. Despite these laws, there are still gaps, of course. Many victims do not report, or when they do, the cases take years to resolve. Some areas lack forensic kits and trained personnel. Mental health support is limited, and societal attitudes still tend to blame the victim rather than the perpetrator. Until these gaps are addressed, justice will remain out of reach for many survivors. And some strategies we have to prevent this is that to prevent the actual sexual assault to happen is we need a multi-level approach. First, we need to educate the public about consent and respect. Second, the economic empowerment to reduce vulnerability caused by poverty. Third, stronger child protection measures, especially against online abuse. Fourth, accessible reporting channels and trauma-informed support. Finally, of course, you have the proper training for law enforcement and healthcare workers to handle cases with sensitivity. So, to conclude all these, in summary, sexual assault in the Philippines is widespread, affecting women, children, and even men. It is committed by someone close to the victim, hidden by silence, and worsened by the stigma. The consequences, physical, psychological, social, and economic, are long lasting. If we want change, we need stronger laws, better services, awareness, and a shift in our culture from one that silences victims to one that supports and protects them. That is all po. Thank you.
Tapos na, Miss Katapang.
Yes po, Doc.
Good day, everyone. We are Group 2 and we are here to discuss the investigator's perspective in a sexual assault investigation. Before I begin, let's have the presentation's overview for you to know the flow of our presentation. First, we have the introduction, which consists the role of the investigator in sexual assault cases, importance of sensitive trauma-informed approach, and second, we have the initial response consists of securing the scene and victim safety, first contact and victim interview considerations, and third, we have evidence collection, which discuss the key evidence types like such as biological or physical, and documentation and chain of custody. Fourth is collaboration, consists of working with forensic examiner and labs, and preparing report for legal proceedings. Next is the fifth, challenges and ethics, which discuss the maintaining professionalism and objectivity, respecting victim confidentiality and rights, and lastly also is the key takeaways. Now, let's imagine that a young woman walks into a police station, her hands trembling as she tries to speak. She's been assaulted, but every word feels heavy, every memory are painful, and the investigator sitting across from her takes a deep breath. In that moment, their role is not just to ask questions, but to listen, to believe, and to guide her through the most difficult experience of her life. This story reminds us that investigators are not just law enforcers. They are seekers of truth and at the same time protectors of dignity. In a sexual assault cases, the investigator's role goes far beyond collecting evidence. They are tasked to interview the victim, document the crime scene, gather forensic evidence, and coordinate with medical legal officers and prosecutors. But what makes this work truly challenging is the emotional weight that comes with every case. An investigator must maintain professionalism while also showing compassion and sensitivity to the survivor. They must ask difficult questions, yet do so in a way that does not re traumatize the victim. According to the Philippine Commission on Women, or PCW, an estimated 1 in 20 women aged 15 to 49 in the Philippines has experienced sexual violence. This was according to the Philippine Statistics Authority 2017 and National Demographic and Health Survey. Yet, many cases remain unreported and often because victims fear being blamed, shamed, or not believed. A 2022 Philippine National Police report noted that while thousands of rape cases are recorded annually, only a small percentage reach conviction due to lack of evidence or withdrawn complaints. That's why the investigator's perspective matters so much. Their actions can mean the difference between justice and silence. When investigators handle these cases with care and diligence, victims are more likely to participate and trust the justice process. As one PNP Women and Children Protection Desk or WCPD officer said in an interview, when we listen without judgment, victims open up more. That's when we get the truth, not by pressure, but through trust. This shows how the investigator's mindset and how they approach, listen, and act. And it can directly affect the outcome of the investigation. Now, let's talk about what it means to be trauma informed. In a sexual assault investigations, trauma can deeply affect how a victim recalls or communicates information. Some may appear calm, while others may seem confused or detached. This doesn't mean they're lying. It's a psychological response to trauma. That's why investigators need to understand that behavior after trauma varies and shouldn't be judged at face value. A trauma informed approach means that investigators should first create a safe, non judgmental space for the victim. Second, use language that shows empathy rather than blame. Third is avoid aggressive questioning or making the victim repeat their story multiple times. And lastly, be aware that trauma can affect memory and emotional expression. For instance, instead of asking, "Why didn't you fight back?" an investigator should ask, "Can you tell me what you were feeling at that moment?" This simple change in phrasing shows sensitivity, and it respects the victim's experience and avoids amplifying fault. According to the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime, or UNODC, trauma informed investigation practices can lead to a higher victim cooperation and more reliable testimonies. Similarly, a 2019 study by the Center for Women's Studies, University of the Philippines, found that victims who felt supported by investigators were twice as likely to pursue their cases in court. Unfortunately, not all investigators receive adequate training in trauma response. Some still treat sexual assault like any other crime, focusing only on evidence and overlooking the emotional impact. This often leads to victims withdrawing their complaints, which is a pattern that continues to hinder justice in the Philippines. In a 2021 GMA News report, a survivor shared, "I went to the police, but they made me repeat my story over and over. It felt like I was reliving the trauma each time. I just stopped going." This is exactly why sensitivity is not optional. It's essential. Every investigator must remember that how they treat a victim during the first interview can shape the victim's entire healing journey. When investigators adopt a trauma informed perspective, they not only strengthen the case, they restore trust in the justice system and give survivors a voice. Now, to sum it up, the investigator's perspective in a sexual assault case is both professional and human. They must be skilled enough to build a strong case and compassionate enough to protect a survivor's dignity. As we move on to the next part of this discussion, covering the investigative process and techniques used in sexual cases, let's remember that justice begins with how investigators see, hear, and treat those who have been silenced. Allow my group member, Mr. Nikolai Linson, on what's the investigator initial response and how they collect pieces of evidence.
Thank you, Atterбridge, and today I will be discussing securing the scene and victim safety. In this slide, the first step in any investigation is to secure the scene and ensure the victim's safety. Responders must check for threats, protect the area from disturbances, and provide necessary aid to the victim. Staying calm and professional builds trust and keeps the scene controlled. By focusing on safety and evidence preservation, investigators fulfill their legal and ethical duties from the very start. In this next slide, I will discuss first contact and victim interview considerations. During first contact, investigators should show compassion, respect, and neutrality. The way they communicate affects the victim's comfort and willingness to cooperate. Using open ended questions allows victims to share their story freely. For example, can you tell me what happened? While avoiding bias and judgment ensures fairness, because trauma can affect memory. Patience and understanding are vital. Accurate objective documentation and trauma informed practices help maintain professionalism and reduce further distress. Next up is respecting victim confidentiality and rights. These are the key evidence types: biological and physical. Biological evidences includes blood, semen, saliva, hair, or skin cells that can identify a suspect through DNA testing, while physical evidence includes clothing, weapons, fingerprints, or objects connected to the crime. Evidence can be biological or physical. Each item must be handled carefully to prevent contamination and protect the victim's privacy. Proper labeling, sealing, and storage ensures evidence remains reliable and confidential. Mishandling can damage the case and violate the victim's rights. Next is documentation and chain of custody. In this slide, it states that all evidence must be well documented, stating when, where, and by whom it was collected. A proper chain of custody tracks every transfer to prevent tampering or loss. Sensitive files should be accessible only to authorized personnel, and digital data must be securely stored. Careful record keeping protects both the integrity of the evidence and the victim's confidentiality. That is all from me, and the next few slides will be discussed by our co-member, Ms. Nina Evangelista.
Thank you, Nikolai. So now I will present from the perspective of a sexual assault investigator, focusing on collaboration with forensic examiners and laboratories and how forensic findings are documented for legal proceedings. So the collaboration between sexual assault investigators, forensic examiners, and laboratories is critical to advancing investigations and supporting prosecution. Here is an overview of how this collaboration typically works and how investigators prepare reports for legal proceedings, especially for someone new to this field. Working with forensic examiners and laboratories. First, forensic examiners such as sexual assault nurse examiners, physicians, and forensic specialists conduct medical forensic examinations on victims and suspects. They collect physical evidence, including body swabs, clothing, and documented injuries. Second, investigators coordinate with examiners before and after examinations to share initial case information, clarify medical findings, and discuss evidence needs. Third, the chain of custody is paramount. Investigators ensure evidence is collected, labeled, stored, and transported according to strict protocols to maintain integrity and admissibility in court. To continue, fourth, laboratories analyze biological samples such as DNA toxicology, trace evidence, and other forensic materials. Investigators maintain communication with lab personnel to track evidence testing progress and results. Fifth, collaborative communication helps clarify lab findings, interpret forensic results in context, and investigate any discrepancies that may arise. Lastly, maintaining evidence integrity and accuracy through secure handling and clear documentation helps build credible cases. So, overall, collaboration is essential for a thorough and credible investigation. So, investigators work closely with forensic examiners such as sexual assault nurse examiners and DNA analysts. These professionals conduct the medical forensic examinations and laboratory analysis that provide critical evidence in these cases. So, as investigators, we coordinate with them to ensure proper sample collection and maintain the integrity of the evidence chain of custody. Clear communication during evidence testing is vital to understand results accurately and address any discrepancies. Now we have preparing reports for legal proceedings. Investigators document all findings from crime scene processing, witness and victim interviews, forensic exam reports, and lab results. So these reports are structured early and logically, often including case summary and incident description, evidence collected and analysis results, statements and observations from forensic examiners, and investigative actions taken and outcomes. So accuracy is critical. Investigators verify all factual information and avoid speculation. Reports are prepared in a court ready format that can be used by prosecutors and defense, often including exhibits such as photographs and forensic lab reports. Lastly, well prepared reports help prosecutors understand the forensic context, link evidence to case theories, and support testimony in court. So, the preparation of reports is a crucial responsibility. So, investigation reports include a detailed summary of all evidence collected, witness and victim statements, and forensic findings. So, these reports are structured logically and factually to recreate the reality of the assault from the victim's perspective while avoiding any speculations. So, using precise language, especially to describe non consensual acts, helps support the prosecution effectively. So, to summarize, effective collaboration and diligent report preparation underscore the multidisciplinary effort necessary in ensuring transparency, accuracy, and accountability throughout the investigation process.
Good day, everyone. Today, I'll be discussing the investigator's perspective in sexual assault investigation, focusing on challenges and ethics. Investigating sexual assault cases is one of the most sensitive and complex part of criminal investigation. It requires only not only technical skills but also emotional intelligence and strong ethical principles. As investigators, it is important to maintain professionalism, stay objective, and most importantly, respect the rights and dignity of the victims. Before we go deeper, let's have an overview of what we'll talk about today. There are two major ethical responsibilities that investigator must uphold: professionalism and objectivity, and respecting victim confidentiality and rights. These are the foundation of an ethical and effective investigation. Without them, the case could be compromised and the victim could experience further trauma. First, let's talk about maintaining professionalism and objectivity. As investigator, we must avoid bias and stereotypes. For example, we should never assume that a victim is lying just because of their appearance, behavior, or social background. Every case must be judged based on the facts and evidence, not personal opinions. Next, we have to control our emotional responses. Sexual assault cases can be emotionally heavy, but showing anger, frustration, and even sympathy during interviews might affect the investigation. Instead, we should remain calm and neutral. We should also follow evidence-based protocol, meaning we base our investigation on actual procedures and scientific method, not instinct or assumption. When interviewing victims, we must use open ended and non leading questions like, "Can you tell me what happened in your own words?" rather than, "Did he do this to you?" This approach gives the victim control over their narrative. Lastly, always give clear documentation from the initial report to the final findings. Accurate notes and report prevent confusion, ensure transparency, and support credibility in court. Next, we focus on respecting victims' confidentiality and rights. Victims' sexual assault often fear of being judged and exposed. That's why we must protect their privacy and identity. For example, by not disclosing their names in reports or to the media. We must also obtain consent before examination or interview. Victims have the right to know what will happen and to refuse the procedures they are not comfortable with. Other ethical point is to minimize repeated interviews. Asking the victims to retell their story over and over can cause re-traumatization. It's best to coordinate with other agencies to avoid redundant questioning. Also, secure all the evidence and records properly, from clothing samples to digital data, because any mishandling can compromise both the case and the victim's privacy. Lastly, provide access to victims' advocates. These are the professionals who can support the victim emotionally and legally throughout the process. This helps them to feel heard and protected. Despite these ethical guidelines, investigators still face common challenges. One is confirmation bias and tunnel vision. When an investigator becomes fixated on one theory or suspect and ignores other responsibilities, for example, assuming only the boyfriend could be the suspect and missing other leads. There's also pressure from the public or media. High profile cases often attract attention, and sometimes investigators feel rushed to solve it quickly, which can affect objectivity. Next is the mandatory reporting laws, which these laws are meant to protect victims. They sometimes conflict with victims' wishes for privacy. Investigators needs to balance both sides carefully. Another challenge is the risk of re-traumatization. The process of recounting the assaults can trigger painful memories for the victim. Lastly, caseload and fatigue. Investigators often handle multiple cases, which can cause burnout and affect their decision making, managing workload, and mental health crucial and consistent professionalism. Now, let's look at the best ethical practices to overcome those challenges. First, transparency and documentation. Always record what was done, why, and by whom. Transparency builds trust not just with the victim, but also within the justice system. Second, trauma informed interviewing. This means understanding how trauma affects memory and behavior. For example, a victim who can't remember exact details isn't necessarily lying. It could be due to trauma. Next, limited disclosure of information. Only share case detail with authorized personnel. Must prevent gossip, rumors, and possible leaks. Then a survivor centered approach. Always consider the victim's well being in every decision. For instance, letting them choose where to sit during an interview can help them to feel comfortable and safe. Finally, collaboration with a multidisciplinary team, including forensic experts, psychologists, and legal advisors. This ensured that the case is handled historically and ethically from all sides. To sum it all up, always stay objective and professional. Focus on facts, not emotions or biases. Respect the survivor's rights and dignity. They are more than just witnesses. They are human beings who deserve compassion. Balance justice with comparison. Solving the case is important, but so is protecting the victim from further harm. Most importantly, ethics is the foundation and credible investigation. Without ethics, no matter how strong the evidence, justice can still fail. Thank you.
Hindi lang po isa o dalawa, kundi 13 umano ang nanghalay sa 15 anyos na babae.
Kinahasa umano ng paulit-ulit ang 14 anyos na babae sa Quezon City. Ang suspect, sariling ama ng dalagita.
Every survivor carries a story that was never meant to happen. Some stories begin with trust, others with friendship, and many with silence. But when that silence is broken, even by a trembling voice or a single step toward help, that moment becomes an act of courage. Sexual assault does not choose its victims. It strikes women and men, friends and strangers, and members of every community, including those whose voices are too often ignored. Today, we honor the strength it takes to speak and the responsibility of those who listen. Because the journey from trauma to justice does not start in the courtroom. It starts with compassion, with safety, and with the simple promise that we believe you.
Tulungan niyo po. Hindi ko po alam yung gagawin ko. Kaibigan ko po si Mama. Ma'am, ligtas po kayo dito. Salamat po sa tiwala. Kung okay lang po sa inyo, pupunta tayo sa office para doon po kayo magsalita. Sige po. Ayoko na po mag- Ma'am, may survivor po tayo. Nag-report po ng sexual assault. Emotional distress observed.
Hindi po namin kayo pagmamadaliin. May immediate danger po ba sa inyo?
Wala na po. Sana natakot pa din po ako.
Naiintindihan ko po. Ngayon, tatawagin ko ang aming trauma-informed examiner para kamustahin ang kalagayan niyo po. Kayo po ang may control kung gusto niyo pong huminto. Sabihin niyo lang po kung kailan.
Good morning po. Gusto ko lang po ipalam na hindi ito test kung nagsasabi kayo ng totoo. Ang layunin nito ay makita kung kamusta ang kalagayan ng inyong isipan at malaman kung ayos lang po na magtanong ako sa inyo. Can you tell me what day it is today?
December.
Where are we right now?
Batangas.
Please repeat these three words. Apple, chair, pen.
Apple, chair, bed.
Can you count backward from 20 to 1?
20, 19, 17, 5, 4, 2, 1.
Naalala niyo po ba ang tatlong salita kanina?
Apple, chair, bed.
Ano po ito?
Bed.
Please repeat. The sun is bright.
The sun is bright.
Tiklupin ng papel at ilagay sa mesa. Pakibasa ng nakasulat.
Close your eyes.
Please write one sentence about anything. Salamat po. Kung gusto niyo pong magpahinga, magsabi lang ako. Bye.
Mama, may kailangan po kong sabihin. Hindi ko po alam kung tama itong ginagawa ko. May nangyari po kasi sa akin. Sige lang, ma'am. Tama po kayo ng pinuntahan. Ano po bang nangyari? Ma'am, may nangyari po kasi sa akin. Baka po isipin niyo, ginusto ko yun po. Part po ko ng LGBT. Pero hindi po. Pinilit niya ako. Hindi kasalanan ng kasarian mo. Kung ano nangyari sa'yo, seryoso yan. Kung handa ka, pwede kitang samahan kausapin yung investigator. Wala pong pilitan. Pwede kang huminga. Maraming salamat sa pagpunta. Marami talagang takot ang kasama sa paglapit. Pero narito kami para tulungan ka. Pwede mong sabihin ang mga komportable sa'yo sabihin.
Kilala ko po siya. Kaibigan ko po siya. Akala ko safe ako. Pero nung gabing yun, nag-iba siya. Pinilit niya ako. Hindi ko na po alam paano nangyari. Hindi ko po alam kung anong nangyari lahat-lahat. Parang natulala na lang po ako.
Sige lang, hindi na tayo ng dahan-dahan. Hindi mo kailangan ikwento lahat ngayon. Nandito ang examiner natin. Trained siya sa trauma at LGBT sensitive care. Ma'am?
Morning po. Thank you for being here. Hindi ko iisipin ang kasarian mo para husgahanin si Mami. Yung experience mo, yung sakit mo, valid. Bago tayo magpatuloy, gusto ko muna makita kung kamusta ang pag-iisip mo ngayon. Pwede ko bang tanungin kung ano ang nakikita mo?
Ha? Ano po?
Sige, tingnan mo yung paligid mo. Ano ang 5 bagay na nakikita mo ngayon?
Yung papel po. Yung salamin niyo po. Tapos yung tablet niyo po. At yung lamesa at upuan po.
Very good. Huminga ka muna ng malalim. Okay na?
Medyo po.
Hindi mo kailangang ikwento lahat ng diretso. Pero ano ang pinaka naaalala mong part? Yung pinakaunang moment na na-realize mong hindi kasi.
Nung hinawakan niya ako, sabi niya wala namang makakaalam. Tapos tinanong ko kung bakit niya ginagawa yun. Tapos sinakpan niya na yung bibig ko. Hindi ako nakagalaw. Hindi ako nakasigaw.
Thank you. Hindi ka nagkulang. Maraming survivors ang natutulala. That's a normal trauma response called freeze. Hindi ibig sabihin nun gusto mo.
Pero kung natatakot po ako. Kasi baka sabihin nila na ginusto ko po yun dahil tomboy ako. Gusto ko talaga yun.
Kung ano ang orientation mo, ang no ay no. Ang hindi makapagsalita dahil sa takot ay hindi yes. Ang identity mo ay hindi basehan para pagdadahan ang realism.
Pwede kitang tulungan mag-file ng report, magpa-medical legal at humingi ng protective measures.
Pwede po ba kahit LGBT ako?
Yes po. Hindi mo kailangan humingi ng permiso para protektahan ang sarili mo. Citizen ka, may karapatan ka. Pareho kayo nagpakita ng malaking tapang. May karapatan kayo sa medical legal exam, protection orders, and legal assistance. Hindi kayo nag-is.
Kasama ninyo kami mula umpisa hanggang dulo. Ang kwento ninyo ay mahalaga. Kayo ang may kontrol sa bawat hakbang.
This scenario demonstrates a trauma-informed interview with a female sexual assault survivor. Notice how the investigator ensures safety, avoid intimidation, and empowers the survivor from the beginning.
Porto. Before we start, I want you to know that you are safe in this room. So you may pause, you can refuse to answer, or take a break anytime. You're in control of this interview.
Sige po, pero kinakabahan po ako.
Okay lang yan, that's understandable. And you only need to share what you feel like you are ready to share, and if you need ng ibang tao or support person, we can arrange that naman.
Pwede po bang tayo na lang?
Sige, okay. Of course, wala sa mga nangyari ang kasalanan mo.
The investigator starts with non-leading, open-ended questions to allow the survivor to narrate her experience freely.
Maaari mo bang sabihin sa akin ang dahilan ng iyong pagparito?
Nirape po kasi ako ng kaibigan ko.
Thank you for trusting me with that information. Kung handa ka, maaari mo bang sabihin sa akin kung anong nangyari?
Kagabi po kasi, nagiinuman kami ng mga kaibigan ko.
The investigator validates emotions and avoids any hints of blame.
Nung nalalasing na po ako, pumasok na po ako sa kwarto. Hindi ko po alam na sumunod po siya. Tapos po, ayun po, pinipilit niya po ako. Siyempre pumipiglas po ako. Hindi ko po kaya. Tapos po, ayun, hinawakan niya na yung kamay ko. Hindi ako.
I am very sorry na nangyari yun sa'yo. Anong nararamdaman mo nung mga panahon na yun?
Hindi po ako makagalaw.
Freezing is a normal trauma response. The investigator acknowledges this without judgment.
Nahirapan po ako. Hindi ko na rin po alam ang gagawin ko.
May mga sinasabi ba siya sa'yo?
Habang hawak niya po ako, tinatakot niya po ako. Sabi niya po, sasaktan niya raw po ako. Lalo't wala naman daw kung maniniwala sa akin.
Karaniwan pong nangyayari sa mga taong may matinding takot ang hindi makagalaw at hindi naman po yun kahinaan. Salamat din at ibinahagi mo yun sa akin kahit alam kong mahirap balikan ng mga detalye.
The investigator gathers essential information while maintaining safety and consent.
Ngayon po, tatanungin ko lang po ang ilang bagay para malaman kung anong uri ng examination ang kailangan nyo. Maaari po kayong tumanggi sa kahit anong tanong. Ayos lang po kayo sa inyo?
Wala.
Nagkaroon po ba ng anumang penetration kung komportable po kayong sagutin?
Meron po. Sa ari ko po.
Pagkatapos po ng pangyayari, ano pong sunod yung ginawa?
Tumakbo na po ako sa banyo. Umiiyak.
Bukod sa umiyak ka dun, may iba ka pa bang ginawa?
Umiyak lang po.
Okay. Pagkatapos ba nito, kanina bago ka magpunta dito, naligo ka ba or nagpalit or ano ba?
Hindi po. Wala po.
The investigator explains every step clearly to allow informed consent.
So, ngayon po ay ipapaliwanag ko sa inyo kung anong uri ng examination ang gagawin sa inyo kung inyo lamang naman po itong pahihintulutan. Ang exam ay para malaman ang iyong physical condition at para makakuha ng mga ebidensya. Ang gagawin po sa inyo ay pangkalahatang physical exam, pagdodokumento ng anumang injury na natamo nyo sa pangyayari, at pagkuha ng swab sa ilang mga bahagi ng iyong katawan kung papayag po kayo.
Sakit po ba?
May pagkakataon na hindi komportable pero hindi naman tayo magpo-proceed sa ganong mga examination kung hindi nyo pahihintulutan. So, papaliwanag din ng doktor sa iyo ang mga gagawin or bago gawin.
Sige po. May babayaran po ba?
Wala po kayong babayaran na kahit ano. Sasailalim po kayo sa libreng medical legal exam, makakatanggap po kayo ng psychological counseling at tutulungan po namin kayo na mag-file at mag-antala ng reklamo. Yun po ay kung gugustuhin niyo po.
In this moment, the priority is to make the survivor feel safe and heard. Emotional validation is essential. The investigator gently reassures her that her feelings are real and understandable, reminding her that the assault is not her fault. By creating a calm and supportive space, the survivor is given control, comfort, and the assurance that she is not alone.
Natatakot mo ko na baka husgahan nila ako.
Naintindihan ko po yung takot niyo, pero malinaw ko pong sasabihin, hindi niyo po kasalanan ng nangyari. Hindi dahil sa kung ano man yung suot niyo ng mga oras na yon or dahil nagiinom kayo o sa relasyon niyo sa kanya. Karapatan niyong maging ligtas at irespeto na.
Maraming salamat po at tutulungan niyo po ako.
Wala pong anuman. Gaya nga po na sinabi ko kanina, ligtas po kayo sa amin at kayo po ay aming tutulungan.
This demonstration shows key trauma-informed principles: safety, open-ended questions, emotional validation, informed consent, and clarity of rights. This approach preserves dignity, supports healing, and strengthens forensic evidence.
Good evening, everyone. This is Nicolangelo Gilinson reporting live from Channel 9 Evening News. We begin tonight with a developing story that has shaken a local university community. A local university student was assaulted last night while walking home to her apartment near campus. According to initial reports, the student was returning from her evening class when an unidentified male followed her into a dimly lit walkway. The suspect allegedly grabbed her at the entrance of her apartment. The victim was able to seek help immediately and is now receiving medical attention and support from authorities. Investigators are currently reviewing the CCTV footage in the area and urging anyone with information to come forward as the search for the suspect continues.
Welcome
Today, we will show you how a medical professional explains a sexual assault medical report in two situations, to a parent and in court as an expert witness. Our goal is to show how to communicate findings clearly, respectfully, and without causing more trauma.
Clear, compassionate, and professional.
Good morning po. Ako po yung nanay ni Jenny.
Good morning, ma'am. Pasok po. Kamusta naman po kayo?
Okay naman po.
Bali, ito po yung report ng sa anak ninyo. Ma'am, I know this is difficult. I'm here to explain the findings gently and clearly. First, your daughter is safe, and everything we discuss stays confidential.
Reassurance.
Doc, what did you see in the examination?
In the report, we look at the three main things. First, we have the physical injuries. Second is the signs of force or trauma. And last, we have the collected evidence like DNA. So, ayun po.
Physical injuries, signs of force or trauma, or collected evidence like DNA if possible.
The report says hymenal abrasion. What does it mean?
It means there is a small scratch in the hymen. It does not automatically prove or disprove assault. We look at the overall picture, not just one finding.
So the absence of injury does mean nothing happened?
In more than 50% of cases, there are no visible injuries. The lack of injury does not mean your daughter wasn't assaulted. This is common because the genital area heals quickly.
No injury is not equal to no assault.
Salamat, Doc. I feel relief. Mas klaro na.
Andito lang po kami para sumuporta. Hindi po kayo nag-iisa.
Please take the stand. Please take your seat.
Yes, Your Honor.
Please explain to the court your role.
I am a licensed forensic examiner and I conducted the medical exam and prepared the report.
Explain your findings in layman's terms.
In simple words, Your Honor, the examination showed minor abrasions, no major injuries, evidence collected was completed, and these findings neither prove nor disprove consent. Injuries vary widely among survivors.
If there are no major injuries, does that mean no assault?
No, Your Honor. The absence of major injuries is common. Assault can occur with little or no visible trauma.
So are you here to decide who's telling the truth?
No, Your Honor. My duty is only to present medical findings, not to determine guilt.
Expert is not equal to a judge.
As you've seen, explaining an essay medical report requires clarity, compassion, and objectivity. Whether speaking to a parent or to a judge, the expert must stick to facts, use simple language, and avoid assumptions.
Thank you for watching!
Magandang araw sa'yo. Ako ang investigator on case. Ang pangalan ko ay Miel Bernal. Naririto ako upang tanungin ka ukol sa sexual harassment na kumakailan ay nangyari sa iyo. Maaari mo bang basahin itong consent form na ito para alam mo ang iyong mga karapatan bago tayo magsimula sa interview ito? Kukumpirmahin ko lamang ang mga impormasyon ukol sa'yo. Ikaw ba si Bless Balmes? Ikaw ba ay 14 years old? Kailan at saan nangyari ang insidente?
Sa kakaalala ko po ay nung kamakalawa lang po sa bahay po namin.
Nakilala mo ba ang taong gumawa nito sa'yo?
Nakikita ko lang po sila na kasama po ng ate ko pero hindi ko po sila
Maaari mo bang isiwalat ang nangyari sa'yo noong araw na yun?
Okay naman po yung pinati pa po nila ako. Nag-inuman po silang lahat doon.
Ay ate! Ano?
Dahil hindi ko naman po sila ganun kakilala, nagkulong lang po ako sa kwarto nun.
Bye-bye!
Ganda ng kapatid mo ah.
Natulog po ako, hindi ko po alam kung ano pong ginagawa nila, ganyan. Basta ang alam ko lang po, nagkakasiyahan na po sa labas. Tapos,
Parang di naman bata yung kapatid mo.
ito, tarantado talaga to. Pati bata, di pinapalagpas.
Nagka-boyfriend na ba yun? O girlfriend? Pwede maki-CR?
Sus! Tatakasan mo lang kami eh. Hihilang yung tao eh. Ge, akit doon!
Pumasok po yung, hindi ko po alam kung paano po nangyari. Basta nagising na lang po ako. Yun po, hindi ko po alam po nasisimulan. Natakot po ako kasi yung kapatid ko, alam niya po yung nangyari. Sinubukan ko po na magsumpo sa kanya pero
Sarap mo. Nag-enjoy ako. Salamat.
po, may feeling ko po wala na po akong kakampi. Wala naman po akong masabi. Hindi po ako makapagsumbong sa mga magulang namin. Wala din po akong mahinga ng tulong kasi wala naman po sila dito.
Ate,
Ano?
may sasabihin sana ako sa'yo.
Ano namang kaartan yan? Papansin ka talaga. Ano? Ba't di ka magsalita ngayon?
Eh kasi ate, yung alam kong magagalit kayo, yung isa mo kasing kaibigan.
Kaibigan ko na naman! Ano? May problema ka na naman sa mga kaibigan ko?